Chapter 22, Banking and Money. Give me control over a nation's currency, and I care not who makes its laws. This is a quote from Baron M.A. Rothschild. Here are some interesting words regarding money and finance from Spirituality from the Stars. We see it misused in many differing guises. We see whole lives ruined through corruption. We see the lives of many of you affected by its irregular distribution. We see the lives affected by your nations because it is hoarded by a few in power. We detect the greed that encapsulates the soul experiences of you, the desires consuming the thoughts of your minds on a daily basis, a belief that you require more, the desires of your minds believing that you would be happier if you had more. These desires somewhat poisoning your mindsets, making you crave more to gain power or to impress your peers with having more, certainly more than they have. There is enough to go around. We witness the depository buildings stacked high with numbered paper collecting dust whilst your people are starving. These stockpiles resembling small mountains and only available to buy arms should a country go to war. These piles of tender sat there unused and kept guarded, available to be distributed but siphoned off by the people in power to accommodate luxurious lifestyles whilst your fellow man suffers. You know who you are, some of you enslaved by your attainment of objects, things, items that you feel you need. Money is designed to be exchanged freely, and it has become a powerful tool used by many within many walks of life to control others. The power of a piece of paper, that power that holds and binds some of you. Interest has always been the money power's main instrument. It took control of the planet by starting wars, financing both sides, and having governments go deeply into debt. Interest is a wealth transfer from the poorest 80% to the richest 10%. The global numbers are not known, but in Germany $1 billion a day is paid by the poorest 80%. Extrapolated to the world, this means the plutocracy drain anywhere between $5 trillion and $10 trillion per year. This is a quote by Anthony Michels. In Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, it was discovered that Mayer Amschel Rothschild had unknowingly discovered the missing passive component of economic theory known as economic inductance. He had also discovered that when you assumed the appearance of power, people soon gave it to you. He also discovered how to extend his wealth and found that public greed would allow currencies to be printed by government order beyond the limits of backing in precious metal or the production of goods and services known as GDP, Gross Domestic Product. This system creates debt. It was highlighted in Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, that wars are the balancing systems of debt by killing the true creditors and falling back on what is left of the resources and regeneration of those resources. A great example is the Iraq War and the oil fields there. In G. William Domhoff's book entitled Who Rules America?, he argued that the United States is dominated by an elite political and economic ownership class. He states that in the U.S., wealth is highly concentrated in a relatively few hands. As of 2007, the top 1% of households, the upper class, own 34.3% of all privately held wealth. The next 19%, managers, professionals and small business, had 50.3%, which means that 20% of the people owned 85%. Leaving only 15% of the wealth for the bottom 80%, wage and salary workers. He goes on to say that as of 2007, income equality in the US was at an all-time high for the past 95 years, with the top 0.01% receiving 6% of all US wages. He also looks at the global issue of the inequality and concluded that the top 10% of the world's adults control around 85% of global household wealth. Jim Marrs in his book entitled Our Occulted History writes about the black nobility. He writes that descendants of early priests and money changers rose to power in Venice prior to the Rothschilds. These Venetians intermarried with existing European royalty, gained power and became known as the black nobility. These people earned their black nobility title because of their ruthless lack of scruples. They employed murder, rape, kidnap, assassination, robbery and deceit on a grand scale. They have immense wealth. The most powerful of these families are located in Italy, Germany, Switzerland, Britain, Holland and Greece, in that order. Mars also wrote that the founder of the Rothschild dynasty, Mayer Amschel Rothschild, wrote in his will that he exerted the right of primogeniture, which means that only the eldest son in each generation can control the family's wealth. Through this method, the Rothschild family has been held tightly together and the innermost family members are privy to the innermost control and have little knowledge of the financial dealings. Former top executives of the Rothschilds have complained that they were often kept out of the loop with important decisions. Biographer of the Rothschilds, Derek Wilson, stated that genetics, mythology, deliberate training, opportunities provided by wealth and connections, all have played their part in producing one of the most remarkable, perhaps the most remarkable, family of recent history. He goes on to say that few dynasties, with the exception of hereditary monarchies preserved from oblivion by the right of primogeniture, have maintained their influence in the world for 7 generations. Their fortune began in the 1700s because it is then that Mayer Amschel developed the practice of fractional reserve banking. This is the idea of lending out more money that you have in assets. The author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin, states that the Rothschilds matured and learned the magic of converting debt into money. They then moved beyond the confines of Frankfurt and established additional operations in the financial centers, not only of Europe, but of much of the civilized world. History records that the money changers have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit and violent means possible to maintain their control over governments by controlling money and its issuance. This is a quote by James Madison, 4th U.S. President.